Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Twice only does Jesus use this expression in sending someone away who has received grace from him, and both times to a woman. The woman who stretched out her hand to touch the hem of his garment, we just had his reading the other day, and the sinner in the home of Simon who has been so arrogant and contemptuous of Jesus. When Jesus says to them, go in peace, he's not ending the relationship with either. He's not spurning the costly gratitude of this woman who's now become righteous. Rather, he wants the woman to take the responsibility of her life to get on with her life. But most importantly, he's saying, sending her into the world. Go, he says, so that wherever she goes, she repeats the story of her own conversion, and that she herself becomes a personal light or an evangelizer for others. Her voice becomes Jesus' voice of forgiveness, now heard far and wide. In all our efforts of evangelization, there is always something of our own experience of forgiveness and grace that should shine through. Only those who, like this woman, are set free can actually enkindle the love of God in others. The woman returns home where she had plied her trade before. Charity begins at home, and now she begins to bear witness to Jesus and his truth. Where we are, at home, with whom we are, sometimes with words, sometimes with silent communion with Jesus, is the way we evangelize. Lastly, Jesus uses a very unusual expression in the Greek text. He does not say to her, go in peace. He says to her, go into peace. That's not the ordinary form of the farewell in Hebrew, but it is much more eloquent. Go in peace is momentary. Go into peace is more lasting. Eli, the priest at Shiloh, had said that to Hannah, go into peace. Nathan, the prophet, had said that to David. Their words were a wish, a prayer for a continued blessing from God. So Jesus takes that same formula and changes the water of a human wish into the wine of divine blessing. Jesus says, go into peace. In other words, keep entering into peace with God. We enter more profoundly into peace within our souls and within the company of those around us. Jesus' final words are a blessing. They are a bright promise of progress in grace, of tranquility that surrounds us with joy. That robust joy that cannot be hidden, that will always attract others in the work of evangelization. That joy, most assuredly, is more important than our pale, anemic words. The guests at table then say among themselves, who is this? Literally, they're saying that within themselves. They do not verbalize their criticism of Jesus. They have seen Jesus dismantle Simon. They're afraid they'll do the same to themselves. They see Jesus announcing God's forgiveness, and they judge it an outrage. Jesus sends the woman away from the self-righteous, saying, your faith has saved you, go into peace. God's grace freely offered, totally unearned. It is given to the sinner, even in the face of the hostility of the self-righteous. Like the parable of the prodigal son, this parable ends unfinished. What will Simon's ultimate response be? It's left unanswered. Will he recognize his own indebtedness and repent? Then and now, we must complete the parable with our own response. Can we say, like this woman, I have sinned, I have not yet repented, I have heard the offer of grace. Christ does not avoid me any more than he avoided this woman. Can I be led to such a gesture of humble thanksgiving and devotion as she was? I came across this little parable from a Persian poet from the 13th century. And in a certain sense, it's kind of takes this message and translates it another way, and I want to share it with you. Jesus, while on earth, was entertained in the cell of a dervish monk of eminent reputation for sanctity. In the same city dwelt a youth sunk in every sin, whose heart was so black that Satan himself shrank in horror from it. This last presently appeared before the cell of the monk, and as if smitten by the very presence of the divine prophet, began to lament deeply his sin and the misery of his life, and shedding abundant tears, implored pardon and grace. The monk indignantly interrupted him. He demanded how dare he appear in his presence and that of God's holy prophet. He assured him that for him it was in vain to seek forgiveness. And to prove how inexorably he considered his lot was fixed for hell, the monk exclaimed, "May God grant me but one thing, that I may stand far from this man on judgment day." On this Jesus spoke, "It shall be even so. The prayer of both is answered. The sinner has sought mercy and grace, and has not sought them in vain. His sins are forgiven. His place shall be in paradise at the last day. But this monk prayed that he may never stand near the sinner. His prayer too shall be granted. Hell shall be his place, for there the sinner shall never come." Isn't that nice? It translates that in almost the same way. Okay, I think we have a few more minutes. I'd like to end the course with you by looking at the shortest parable that Jesus told, the one that lays bare the very structure of all the parables in one way or another. And not only does it lay bare the structure of the parables, but actually lays bare the structure of our fundamental spiritual experience. And it's found in Matthew 13, verse 34, let me see. 44. Okay. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it. Okay? Let's look at those. Okay. This short parable, or two parables actually, tell us the way that all the parables work, and they also tell us the way the divine pervades the human, how God invades our life, and how God brings us to himself. The sequence, these parables, this twin parable, shows the sequence of God's continuing incarnation. Three ways: to find, to sell, and to buy. Those are the three verbs. To find means the intrusion of some new possibility. To sell, the reversal of the past. And to buy, a new action dictated by the new situation. Let us look to the meaning of each of these verbs and see how the parables of Jesus draw that out. Some parables will talk more about finding. Some will talk more about selling. Some will talk more about buying. All right? What does it mean? What is the ultimate meaning in this parable, to find? To find means to encounter, to chance upon some experience unexpected. It's a simple expression that includes all those encounters that make our life something other than a well-orchestrated movement. Something happens to us that is not there because of our skill, because of our foresight, because of our planning. We encounter a person, a joyful event. To find basically states a fundamental fact of human existence. Something happens to us outside of our ability. Okay?